Hello, in this tutorial I'm going to be going over surds. So surds have the general form, the square root of a number. Now surds are what we call irrational numbers. That is a number that cannot be expressed as a fraction and is a trail of numbers that travel to infinity following a decimal point. If a number can be square rooted and the answer is not irrational, then the number is not a surd. So for example, the square root of 4 equals 2. 2 is not an irrational number, therefore the square root of 4 is not a surd. Square root of 1 equals 1. 1 is not an irrational number, therefore the square root of 1 is not a surd. Take the square root of 2, for example. The square root of 2 is this number here. However, this number does not end at 5, it actually continues on much further. But if you do this in your calculator will round it off. Now this is an irrational number because we cannot express this as a fraction. So therefore, when it comes to maths and calculations, rather than write 1.4142 and so on, it is much easier just to keep the number on paper written as the square root of 2. This square root of 2 is what we call exact. It is in this form an exact number. This number here, which your calculator will say is the square root of 2, is not exact because numbers have been rounded off from the end. If I was to take this number and multiply it by itself, I would get 1.999 and so on, which is not the same as 2. So I wouldn't get back to the answer to the number I had in the beginning. Okay, so moving on with surds. Surds of the form AB, where AB can be two numbers, can also be written as the square root of A multiplied by the square root of B, i.e. we can split this number by a factor. So for example, if I had the square root of 10, I could rewrite this as the square root of 5 multiplied by the square root of 2. If I had the square root of 50, I could rewrite this as the square root of 2 multiplied by the square root of 25, because 25 times 2 would give me 50, the same as up here 2 times 5 would give me 10. Now when you have the square root of a square number, so for example 25 is a square number, square root of 25 equals 5 because 5 times 5 equals 25. That is in essence what square root is. It's a way of going from this number back to two numbers when multiplied by each other that gave us the original number. So for example, square numbers are 1 times 1, which is 1. 4 is a square number. 9 is a square number. 16 is a square number. 25 is a square number, and so on. So 6 times 6, 7 times 7, the answers that they generate are all square numbers. So when you have a surds question and you end up with the square root of a square number, then either learn these range of numbers or rewrite them in an exam or a test, and you write down the number or replace this square root, say for example square root 25 is replaced with 5. Okay, so that covers the rule where you have some number under a square root can be rewritten as a product of two factors. Now the other rule regarding surds is that the square root of a multiplied by the square root of a can just be written simply as a. So i.e. if you have two surds multiplied by each other which represent the same number, then the answer is just the number within one of those square roots. So for example, if I had the square root of 9 multiplied by the square root of 9, my answer would be 9. Now to see why this is the case, let's break this down before we do the multiplication. So we know that 3 times 3 equals 9. Therefore the square root of 9 equals 3. Square root of 9 equals 3 multiplied by another 3, which gives us 9. So both of these questions give the same answer, which means that if we have the square root of a number multiplied by the same number, then we can just simply rewrite the number that's inside the square root symbol. Okay? Now, with surds, if, for example, we have a much larger number and we need to break this down. So, when we break surds down, we break them down as prime factor products. So, referring back to what prime numbers are, so ignoring 1, we have 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and so on. So when you're given a number, for example the square root of 200, and a question states to simplify this number as a factor of its prime factors, then what you need to do is this. So we have the square root of 200. So the easiest prime factor to break this down by is the square root of 2. Now following the rule that square root of AB equals root A times root B, if I divide this by 2, I'm left with the square root of 100. Now we know that 100 is a square number, so therefore we would end up with root 2 multiplied by 10, which we generally write the number first followed by the surd itself. So square root of 200 is simplified into 10 root 2. So to have a different question, let's have the square root of 600. So again, let's break this down into root 2. So divide 600 by 2 would give us 300. Okay, so now we have root 2 multiplied by root 300. So we can break this down again. So we maintain our root 2, and now we break down the root 300, which again can be broken down into root 2, root 150, because 300 divided by 2 equals 150. Now we can use our rule where root A multiplied by root A equals A. So in this example we have root 2 multiplied by root 2, so that would give us 2. Now to put in another step here, we can take out another root 2 from this root 150, root 2, root 75. Because 150 divided by 2 is 75. So now you maintain our 2, our root 2. Now 75 doesn't go into 2, so now we've thinking of our prime factors and so on. So we've exhausted all the 2's at this moment in time. Now, does 3, let's move on to 3, does 3 go into 75? So 3 into 75. So 3 goes into 7 twice, remainder 1. 3 goes into 15 5 times. So it does, with no remainder. So now we have root 3, root 25. Now we have the square root of 25, which we know from our square numbers is actually just 5. So that would leave us with 2, root 3 multiplied by 5. So to clean this up, we have a number here and another number here. So we can multiply these by each other. So that would give us 10. So now our answer is 10 root 2 root 3. And that would be the answer. So that is how we would simplify root 600 would become 10 root 2 root 3. Okay, I think with Surds, sometimes it's best just to work through examples, work through questions, and then the process will, it's much easier to learn that process. So if I have two questions here, so A and B will have root of 180 and the square root of 800. So if you'd like to pause this video, have a go at these, and then unpause to go through the answers. So to go through the answers then, so we got root 180 here, so we can break this down to root 2, root 90. So thinking of our prime numbers, so again we can go one step further, root 2, root 45. Okay, so our prime numbers then are 2, 3, 5, 7, 11 and so on. So root 2 times root 2 is 2. Now root 45, we can have a look to see if it goes into the other, say 3 and 5 for example. It does go into 3, but I'm going to jump to 5. It doesn't really matter which prime number you choose, the answer will still be the same at the end. So if I divided 45 by 5, so I'd have 5 root 9. Now the square root of 9 is a square number, so 2 root 5 times 3. So my answer would be 6 root 5. So for B, we'd have root 2 root 400. Again, root 2 root 200. Root 2 times root 2 is 2, times root 2 times root 100. Now the square root of 100 is 10, so this will give me 10. 10 times 2 gives me 20, root 2. Okay, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, then please leave them below. Okay, thank you.